now I'd like to bring this back home because once again, I believe we are in a very pivotal time right now for women, and everybody has such unique experiences, and I want to try and bring this all together and really create a synergy and just see how things are connected, because we are connected. Even though we've spoken about law and we've spoken about trafficking and we've spoken about businesses and things, there is still a connection there where it's societal, it's psychological on how women are treated and spoken to and viewed throughout society. So my first question to the panel is, what experience made you champion equality or justice for women in what you do?
I'll be quick because I already talked about it.
Yeah.
And that was experiencing and witnessing injustice, and then deciding that that would be my pathway in life, was to change that.
My first corporate employment position was with a pharmaceutical company. There was 10 female pharmaceutical reps that were let off at the same time. We did not know, unannounced, because a regional manager didn't feel like women could do an equal job. And I ended up being a contributing author to a book about that, but that was more of a mindset type of thing, of just not letting somebody determine what my definition was in the market space. And so I just moved forward from it. That's why.
I'm supposed to be a professor. I have a PhD in political science, and my parents want me to be a professor. And I tried. I actually was a TA, but then it was kind of not that interesting. Blah, 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 blah. It's a lot of talking. And then I did my PhD in political science in Hawaii, and I was working at a new department in the university called the Women's Center. And that's when my job was actually to support young women who had been pregnant and have children, come back to school, et cetera, and navigate the system to get scholarship, to get housing and childcare. And when I saw them actually successful, I feel like this is what I want to do. This is who I am. So, yes.
I would say I've always wanted to be a prosecutor since undergrad. And the reason for that is because I really believe that if you do something wrong that hurts someone else, then you should be accountable. I also have to say, as a slight personal thing, I've always been kind of shy with women. And one of the reasons why I got very angry at my fellow heterosexual males is because I saw what they did, and the stories I've heard with what they did with women that they said they went out with. That's pretty public now with the hashtag #MeToo stories, but you didn't hear it back when I was in college in the late 70s, and when I started work in the 80s. And when I was on the sexual assault team and when I did domestic violence work, I realized how nasty things were. And so when I could, I carried it on when I went overseas. So ditto what Nancy said.
Great, thank you. So being aware of the bias women face, how has that changed how you present your work or communicate with other organizations you have to work with?
Well, I live by a, can you hear me okay? Without the mic? Okay. This is my trial voice. I live by a motto for myself, which is, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So ever since I actually joined the DA's office, and maybe when I was young too, probably my teachers would say, but when I joined the DA's office, I was a forceful personality. I wasn't rude, I wasn't aggressive, but I was forceful. And I also had energy, and I did things, so I built my credibility. But no question that concept for me is, if you don't want to be talked about or told what to do, be at the table and be one of the decision makers.
Great. Now, Latisha, this question is specifically for you. What is the difference you've seen your technology make between women and men?
As far as the test results you're inquiring, so that's a common question. Between gender, there is not that much of a difference. But what you'll see within culturally. So if it's an Asian culture, you'll tend to see that they'll score a little bit higher because they believe like diet impacts their overall health more. Indian populations, even though they're vegetarians, score extremely, extremely low in the lowest category possible. Part of that has to do with our food sources and really the lack of nutrients that's in our food today. The other part of that is that you will see with men a little bit because they internalize stress more, that can impact their score, and that's part of the things that cause oxidization. But even as we talked about the couple of case studies up there, what's different from the female perspective is that females really garnish and control 85% of the healthcare decisions. And what they'll do, like with that case study with 5,000 women, is that at the end of their pregnancy, they actually continued to stay on therapy and brought their husbands in to go on it as well because they wanted to make sure that their family network was taken care of. And so you'll see that continuation on of education that they've received, and which is one of the reasons why I think we need to continue to empower and support women.
Great. And this question's for the whole group. What is the most challenging aspect of your work when you advocate for women?
I'll start, unless you folks want to start. I'll start. Okay. So there's a lot of roadblocks in our work in anti-violence until today. There's still a lot of denial about violence in anti-domestic violence work. You know, even though domestic violence is older in the US, older sort of starting in 1960s, and today is 2019, many, many years after, there's still denial that domestic violence actually happened. In our judges, you know, in our legal system, in our family court, there are judges that don't quite believe that it happened. There are judges in San Francisco, Nancy, you probably know this, that still give a lot of visitation, overnight visitation, to a father who has been jailed, and or we have had cases where a mom is living in San Jose and the father is living in, I don't know, Burlingame or something like that, and the judge actually give 4 times visitation per week, and it's 3 hours every time. And with the traffic and everything, then the mom basically can't work. So what kinds of system is that actually is not supporting one person to actually be able to survive, you know, and, you know, be with the children? There's also a lot of still blaming the victim going on. And then, of course, in my world, there's still a lot of racism and anti-homophobia and anti-transphobia. So when LGBT person is actually experiencing violence, the tendency is to blame them.
So in the healthcare space, it's pretty much still predominated as far as on clinical studies. It's done in Caucasian males, and as far as decision making, a lot of them are older Caucasian males as well. So I agree with Nancy. You know, I had a mentor sponsor tell me once, you know, 90% of success is showing up. And you differentiate yourself by being educated, making yourself feel uncomfortable 5% of the time each day. So pushing the envelope a little bit. And that's really how we've continued to advocate across the board.
Could you pass the microphone down, because we're recording, so.
I don't really have too much to add to what Hediana talked about, other than to say that these decisions are being made about people's lives in spite of the fact that we have written laws to say if there's domestic violence, there's a presumption of either supervised visitation or no visitation. And so it's, my frustration is when the black letter of the law exists, and yet we have people who interpret it differently.
Speaking about overseas, patience. Understanding that true change takes a long time. I found that the UN is pretty good at understanding that. Look at the Sustainable Development Goals, we're looking down to 2030. The US government, not so much. They want something fast. That's why in every country I've been, the laws are the first thing a lot of countries want to change, because that's a quick win that they can come back, hey, we changed the law. Now, actually getting those in the justice system to apply the law and changing the attitudes is a lot longer. It took, starting with Farrah Fawcett and the burning bed, those of you who are old enough to remember that TV movie, to start the domestic violence change that we see in the United States. So, inviting women's NGOs to take parts is a messy process, because it's going to take a lot longer. You have a lot of different ideas. You've got to gain a consensus. Now, going from the ground up is what should happen. But many times, because, hey, we want to show after a year we did something and show metrics, it results in overseas development that they don't have the patience.
Great. Michael, just please continue to hold on to the mic, because I've gotten questions from the audience. And where is it? And the first question is actually a series. It says, how is Syria #1 on the list? And why isn't Saudi Arabia on the list? And what is the impact that America has had on Muslim countries? How much of an effect have any of our policies had, and the monies that we've spent? How much impact do you think that it's had?
On Muslim countries? Okay. First of all, it's not my list, okay? It's a list put together by the groups I mentioned. I'm guessing Syria is #1, as opposed to, say, Saudi Arabia. Because any time you have a breakdown in the civic structure, that means a breakdown in, I hate to use these words, I'm not Richard Nixon, a breakdown in law and order. What happens is, it's easier to do crimes against victims and not have any accountability. So I would suppose, I've never been there, that if a woman is raped in Saudi Arabia, you're going to have a response by the police more likely than if a woman is raped in Syria, which is a huge mess. You have the same problem in Libya, which is why Libya as well is on, I know that from UN colleagues there, the same with Afghanistan. If you are looking at discrimination, certainly you have discrimination in Saudi Arabia. I remember seeing a picture of 3 women pilots from Brunei landing a brand new 787 in Saudi Arabia, and once these 3 pilots landed the plane with all the passengers, they were not allowed to drive a car away to their hotel. If you think about it, there's a little irony there. So the study I gave you is looking not just at discrimination from the standpoint, as say what you have in Saudi Arabia, but also, and I'm sure there's a lot of hidden domestic violence there as well, but also the other countries. Second, the money in Muslim worlds. I've been in a lot of Islamic countries. It depends upon the Islamic country and what that government and how strong the civil society is to put into effect what the money is doing and where the money is going. So where you have a war zone like Iraq and Afghanistan, the US government tends to put a lot of money. Same with Bosnia and Kosovo. We figured out that there was more money per capita spent on Kosovo than any other country, because Kosovo was so small, yet it was in Europe, if you want to call that an Islamic country. Second, I have to say, Islamic countries are very, very different. I really don't want to answer that as a group, okay? You've got everything from Malaysia, Indonesia, this is places I've been. to Saudi Arabia, to Yemen, and to Kosovo, which some consider an Islamic country. So I was quite surprised after coming from Pakistan, because no one prayed 5 times a day, and women were dressed sort of like they're dressed here during the summer. So it's, if you will, I apologize if you don't like this phrase, but it was more Islamic light, okay? In the same way that there are very many levels and different types of Christianity or Judaism or other religions. So it's very hard to answer that question.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nancy. This one is for you. It says, what businesses are mandated to hang up the signs related to SB 1193, and what is the app called?
The app is called map1193.org, and it's right now it's operating in Alameda County and Contra Costa, though we're always offering it. Anything we create in Alameda County, we offer it to anybody else that it has the same commitment. The types of businesses there are actually 13 businesses. We've just added a new type of business, which is hotel motels. So hotel motels are required to hang the poster. Public transit places like the bus depot or BART, I see them on BART, and the buses that go through the cities. Restaurants, massage parlors, healthcare, like the emergency rooms and the urgent cares are required. So there's 13, now 14 businesses that are required to hang this up. And on our website, which is heatwatch.org, it lists all those businesses, and it lists how MAP 1193 works. We actually, the Attorney General was mandated to create the poster, but we did our own because we did it faster. And so we make that available to any group. And right now in Alameda County, we have days of action where we get community together, we train them, kind of what I said, you know, it's $500 fine, $1,000, where would you like it? But the other thing is that day in and day out, there's a group of nuns that live in apartments down in the southern part of my county, and they spend every day going to these businesses, and God help those businesses if they don't have that poster up, because those nuns are not leaving till it goes up. So, you know, this is, everybody can do, anyone in the community can do this.
Great, thank you. And actually, I was going to say you could hold on to the mic. So, other question is, the $190 million from Congress has it been released to law enforcement, or has it simply been approved?
It is actually has gone out. So far, 160 million of the 170 million has gone into the field. The challenge in the beginning was getting law enforcement to ask for the money. And because it isn't just about doing an inventory or figuring out what it is, it required law enforcement to set up a system that had a community involvement and had rape crisis and had people from the DA's office and the rape crisis centers all together to create a working group so that would never happen again. And so right now, most of that money's out. The other money that came was from the DA of New York City, whose name is Cyrus Vance, and he had some gazillion-dollar judgment against a foreign bank. Very unusual for a local DA's office to do that, but he did. And he committed $40 million to the same project. And so, from my perspective, there's no excuse why we don't know, why those aren't tested. Half of that money was to pay for testing, the other to set up systems. But in California last year, a bill that I sponsored put $1 million into California's budget for our local law enforcement to do an audit so we can know what's hidden behind those doors, those locked doors. And we don't know how many law enforcement agencies have actually asked for that money. We're encouraging them to, we're notifying them, and we hope that they'll do it.
Great, thank you.
What Nancy said. Just the app that Nancy was referring to, the website, is map1193.com, not .org. So you can get it, and when you do, it'll look like that.
Okay, and the last question was is directed toward you, Hediana. It is, what percentage of human trafficking victims are men, or forced labor are males? And how do their situations differ from women if they do?
Thank you. Hello? Yes? Thank you for the question. So our clients are actually male, female, and children as well. So I would say 30% of my clients are male. And I think it is because most people probably thought it's Asian women's shelter, so people don't want to give us a call. So mostly it's our attorneys and community members that connect them to us. So Asian Women's Shelter has has 40 a capacity for 40 languages. So we have Russian, Spanish, Arabic, and each language group, group of interpreter work in the community doing, education in the temples, in their mosque, whatever. And based on that outreach, people then start calling us. So far I would say is around 30%. And then the work that involve is mostly like construction, janitor work, restaurant, janitor, cleaning stuff. And my biggest case was actually fishermen. There are a few fishermen that was brought from places in Asia, was brought to Hawaii. And you probably all know that when the fishing industry here actually catch tuna, if I'm not mistaken, they are not required to have employees that have visa. So these people that they recruit in the waters of Hawaii, in the middle of the ocean, they don't have visa to enter the US. So they will be trafficked and exploited in the ocean, in the waters of San Francisco. So my clients were in situation where they only were fed twice a day, with no working with no protective gear, got hurt, sick, etc., and they couldn't run or jump into the soil of the U.S. because they are afraid. So the ones that actually ran away, they just change it. They just do it because they are desperate. But fishing is probably one area that we barely hear about. So think about where your fish come from.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, that concludes our panel. I'm sorry we missed a couple questions, but please, a round of applause for our panelists, because this was a really great conversation. I appreciate them taking time out of their Saturday afternoon, and for you taking time out of your Saturday afternoon to come and join us. So I will thank you again.